My daughter and her husband raised their glasses, pretending to celebrate my recovery. But then I heard him whisper, "Say hi to the sharks," before shoving me off the yacht into the cold Atlantic. All of this just to take my $2.8 billion fortune. They thought I was gone forever. But they had no idea what was waiting at home. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I sat alone in my living room that evening, the house unnervingly quiet, almost too quiet. The soft ticking of the old clock on the wall was the only sound that reminded me time was still moving, even when my world felt like it had stopped. The light of the setting sun poured through the curtains and fell directly onto the family photos lined up on the mantel above the fireplace. I stared at them, my eyes fixed on the smiling face of my daughter Emily, and my heart tightened. I had sacrificed so much for her. I remembered writing the checks, one after another, when she went to college, $60,000 for her tuition. I remembered the pride in her eyes when I handed her the keys to a $25,000 car the day she graduated, telling her, "This is your start." I remembered the $80,000 I spent on her wedding, making sure everything was perfect, every flower, every song, every detail. I even wore the same suit that Margaret, my late wife, had picked for me before she passed. I had stood there, smiling for photographs, thinking to myself that the money meant nothing compared to the happiness of seeing my daughter start her new life. But now, as I sat in this empty living room, I realized those sacrifices had been twisted into weapons. My daughter had chosen her husband's ambition over her father's love. The fortune at stake was more than just numbers. I had built my company from scratch with Margaret by my side. It had taken decades of sweat and risk, late nights when she would bring me coffee as I sat in the garage with prototypes spread out on the floor. We fought together for every client, every contract. And somehow, by the grace of God and relentless work, that small idea grew into a technology company worth billions. $2.8 billion to be exact. And yet, despite all of that, the most precious thing in my life was not the money, not the empire, but the home Margaret and I bought in Boston. $650,000 at the time, a brick colonial house with a wide porch and maple trees in the yard. That house had been our anchor. It was where we brought Emily home from the hospital, where we carved pumpkins on the front steps, and where Margaret hosted Thanksgiving dinners that filled every corner with warmth. Now that very house, and every dollar I ever earned, had become a target in their plan. Emily and Daniel wanted it all. They thought I was weak. They thought they could write me off as senile, confused, a burden in their way. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the rug Margaret picked out 20 years ago. I remembered the countless nights we sat by the fire with Emily. We played board games, drank hot cocoa, and told her stories until she fell asleep on the couch. There was laughter once, and love, so much love, but those memories cut like a knife now. My daughter had stood silently as her husband pushed me overboard. She had not screamed, she had not reached out, she had looked away. That image replayed in my mind again and again, making me feel as if my chest was collapsing under the weight of betrayal. Blood ties used to mean something. A daughter was supposed to protect her father, not sell him out for a signature on a will. For a long time I sat in shock, unable to believe it was real. But as the silence of the house deepened, my emotions shifted. I realized that Emily and Daniel weren't just trying to kill me physically. They were already spreading the rumor that I was losing my memory, whispering lies to neighbors, painting me as a confused old man. They wanted to erase my dignity before they erased my life. I could almost hear their voices rehearsing those lines. "Dad has been forgetting things." He seemed disoriented. "We're only trying to help." Lies, every word of it. I clenched my fists and looked up at Margaret's wedding photo. "You trusted me to raise her right," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I did my best, but she betrayed me, Margaret. She betrayed us both. I can't let her win, not like this." Speaking to her picture gave me strength. It felt as though her spirit filled the room, urging me to fight. The room around me glowed with the last light of day. The gold sun rays lit up the armchair where Margaret used to sit with her knitting, the antique clock we bought on our honeymoon in Maine, and the albums stacked neatly on the coffee table. Every object was a reminder of the life we built together. The weight of loss pressed down on me, but within that weight came clarity. I wasn't powerless. They might have tried to drown me in the Atlantic, but I was still here, still breathing. I looked down at the floorboards I had nailed myself one summer to save money. That house was my legacy. It was proof of everything I had worked for, and I refused to let it become their prize. I opened the drawer of the cabinet and began to sift through old documents, not even knowing what I was looking for at first. Then my hands froze. There it was, the insurance policy Margaret and I had taken out years ago, still active, still binding. Next to it, I found a folder with copies of the corporate shares that Emily didn't know existed. These papers proved my ownership, my control. They were weapons sharper than any blade. I held them in my hands and felt something shift inside me. Fear was gone. Grief was still there, yes, but beneath it burned determination. They had tried to bury me alive, but I was going to turn this around. I sat back again and looked once more at the photo above the fireplace, Margaret smiling in her wedding dress, me standing proudly beside her. I spoke again, softly, but firmly this time. I will stand up for you, for what we built, for the truth. They think I'm broken. They think I'm lost. But they will learn, Margaret. They will regret their words, their lies, and what they tried to do. The house was quiet, but inside me, the storm had already begun. Chapter 1. Of my story had ended with betrayal, but Chapter 2 ended with resolve. I would not be their victim. I would be their reckoning. And as I folded those papers back into the folder, I knew I had taken my first step toward the fight that was coming. I woke before sunrise to a pewter sky and a kitchen that still smelled of last night's coffee. I put the kettle on, warmed my hands on the counter, and poured a cup with 2 sugars and a splash of cream the way Margaret liked it. The papers I spread across the table looked small and dangerous at the same time. The life insurance policy with its raised seal. Photocopies of my voting shares, the quiet kind that decide elections inside a company. The deed to our Boston house, the brick colonial we bought for $650,000 the year Emily started middle school. Last night I sat here and let grief talk. This morning I let it stand in the doorway and watch. I had a list to start. Action steadies a man. At 7 I called my old attorney, Harold Benton. He answered on the second ring, the way he always has, and said my name softly, as if I had just stepped into his office. I told him enough to light up his instincts. Pressure about my will, comments about my memory, strange questions about authority over accounts. I did not tell him about the yacht or the Atlantic. Some truths are better saved until the room is ready for them. Harold promised 3 things before 9. He would confirm my last valid will and place a hold on any attempt to substitute a draft. He would prepare a letter for Bay Commonwealth Bank requesting an immediate freeze on the savings account with a balance of a little over $300,000 and requiring in-person authorization from me to move a single dime. And he would file a notice with the Registry of Deeds so no transfer or lien could be recorded against the house without my physical presence and a passphrase only I would know. "Keep your phone on," he said. "Assume we are not speaking alone." I thanked him and hung up. I dressed in a navy sweater, dark pants, and a cap, and took the morning train downtown. I wanted a commute that looked ordinary. A driver and a town car draw eyes. A man with a coffee on a train looks like everyone else. The sidewalks were wet and shining. Rotating doors squeaked themselves awake. I stepped into the bank as the doors unlocked and asked to see the branch manager. Denise Collins, no relation, came out with a professional smile that flickered when she saw Harold's letter. I asked for the freeze and for a flag on any transfer request. I asked that every authentication step require my voice and the passphrase Harbor Light. She read, nodded, and sat at her terminal. Keys clicked. Her face changed. An online session had opened on my account at 9:30 last night. A transfer of $90,000 to a new subaccount sat in the queue, unposted. She canceled it and placed the freeze. "You will receive alerts on any attempt to move a nickel," she said. I thanked her and shook her hand. As we finished, she hesitated and asked if everything was all right at home. I told her the truth I could tell. "It will be," I said. "Soon." Outside, the air felt rinsed clean. I found a payphone that still worked and called my own voicemail. I spoke a short message the way I used to when I ran operations and wanted a stamped record. "Freeze confirmed. Transfer attempt at 9:30 p.m. blocked. Passphrase set. Next steps, safe deposit, and Harold's letter." Speaking the facts made them settle in my chest, like tools put back in a drawer where they belong. I stopped at a convenience store for a bottle of water. A radio on the counter played the midday update. My name floated through the speaker, wrapped in the cheerful tone reserved for community notices and lost pets. A neighbor reported I seemed confused last week, unsure which day it was. An anonymous bank employee said I had once signed a duplicate form and laughed. A family source worried I was not safe to manage large sums. The segment lasted under a minute, a neat box of insinuation. I stood there with the door of the cooler open and felt something shift. This was not just a grab for money, it was a campaign to erase my voice before taking my things. I paid and walked to the sidewalk. A bus swept past and made my eyes water. I said the sentence out loud so I could hear it. "They are not just after the estate, they are after my name." Anger warmed me without burning me. I told myself to use it, not wear it. Back home, 3 messages waited from Harold. The first confirmed my will on file. The second confirmed that the voting shares remained mine through a class Emily did not know existed. The third warned that someone had called the office pretending to be my assistant, asking for copies of estate documents. His paralegal asked a question only my assistant would know. The caller hung up. "The line is hot," Harold said. "Assume ears and eyes." We agreed to widen the protections. He would deliver his letter to Emily and Daniel by courier, inviting them to his office on Friday afternoon to discuss their concerns about my health and the future of the estate. The invitation would feel safe. It would set a table I owned. I drove to the Beacon Hill branch, where my safe deposit box lives in a cool corridor that smells faintly of old paper and carpet glue. I signed the ledger, took the metal box to a small room, and lifted the lid. Insurance policies rested on top, exactly where I had left them. Share certificates lay beneath. At the bottom sat a small envelope, labeled in Margaret's steady hand. "For Emily, if she ever forgets who she is." I did not open it. Not yet. I checked every page, every date, every signature. Nothing had changed. I put the documents back, locked the box, and returned the key to the pocket of Margaret's windbreaker. Sometimes the act of checking is the act that saves you. I ate lunch at a diner that has stood on that corner since the year I got my first promotion. The waitress set down grilled cheese and tomato soup without asking. Ordinary food balances a man. Between bites, I let the rescue replay once, clean and quick, like pulling a splinter, then letting the wound close. I felt the slap of black water, tasted metal in my mouth, and heard Jake Morrison's voice telling me to hold still, to breathe, to fight the cold by naming things in the boat. The deck, the rope, the engine, the grandson's hands. They had pulled me out. I would do the rest. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 1 below to let me know you're here with me. On the way back to the car, I ducked into a hardware store and bought a small flashlight, thin gloves, and a disposable camera. The clerk looked at the camera like a museum piece and asked if anyone still developed them. "Someone always does," I said. I added black electrical tape and a pencil to the basket. Back home, I unfolded a city map on the kitchen table and traced the blocks around my old house. I wrote the times Emily and Daniel tend to be away, the landscaper's schedule, and the neighbor who watches the street after dinner with a drink in his hand. I marked what I did not know. whether they had changed the back door lock, whether they had added cameras, whether the alarm code had been reset. People who take things always add something they think will keep them safe. The additions make noise. In the late afternoon, my phone lit up with Emily's name. I let it ring twice and answered. Her voice was a soft blanket. She said she was worried after the surgery. She had spoken to Dr. Kaplan. Stress can cloud anyone for a little while, she said. Not a big deal, just temporary. Daniel had been reading about best practices for aging finances. They could come by and put bills on autopay to reduce stress. She paused and let the suggestion sit, neat as a folded napkin. I told her I appreciated the offer. I told her I was resting more. I told her she could drop off a casserole if she wanted. She laughed and said she would send soup. Then she said something she did not mean to say. She asked if I had found the silver pen yet. She had left it by the stack of forms on the yacht. She called it a silly habit, bringing a fancy pen for important papers. I let it pass like a small bird through an open window. No pen yet, I said. Maybe it washed away. We told each other we loved one another and hung up. The call told me everything I needed to know. They were ready to sign papers with or without me. They had props for the scene. After the call, I stood in the living room and watched the sun turn the frame of our wedding photo the color of honey. I spoke to the glass the way a man speaks to the one person who will always hear him. They think I am slow, I said. They think I am blind. I am not. I am busy. Saying it out loud set the words down where they could not wander. I pulled on Margaret's windbreaker. The brass key in the right pocket lay where it belonged. Locks are honest. People are where the confusion starts. I walked the neighborhood as the sky darkened and let my feet learn the rhythm again. The corner streetlight flickered in its old pattern. A dog barked 2 houses down. A television game show sang to no one. Ordinary life is a gift. It lets a man move without being observed. I circled the alley behind my old house and stood by the gate. The kitchen light was off. The living room glowed blue. I waited and listened. No footsteps, no voices. I reached under the planter by the steps where we used to keep a spare key. Gone. Good. Someone remembered to move it. I eased along the wall and peered through the small gap where the curtain did not quite meet the frame. New leather on the couch, lemongrass cleaner in the air, a stack of envelopes by the sink. I took a single photo through the glass, stepped back into shadow, and let the house breathe without me. Back at my kitchen table, I wrote a list on a yellow legal pad. Items to photograph, documents to find, devices to image, names of forensic people Harold could bring in without warning. I drew a box around timeline and around media and underlined both words. They were not merely notes. They were the bones of a story someone was building about me. Stories have seams. Seams can be pulled. Then I wrote one more sentence, slow and careful. They think I lost the map. I wrote it again in a smaller hand. They think I lost the map. Near midnight, I lifted Margaret's photo from the mantel and held it until the glass cooled my palm. They think the ocean finished what they started, I said. It did not. I am here. I am working. You can rest. I set the photo back, packed the flashlight, gloves, camera, tape, and pencil in a paper bag, and slid the bag under the bed the way a soldier lays out a kit before a march. I slept in short pieces and woke when the alarm hummed at 1:30. The house made small sounds as I dressed. A pipe settled. A board exhaled. I slipped on the windbreaker and touched the doorframe for luck. Outside, the cold made the world honest. The street was empty. The maples scratched at the sky. I walked the long way to my old block so my breathing could find the neighborhood rhythm again. I did not try the back door. I went to the study window, the one shielded by the shrub I planted myself. I felt along the frame for the soft place I remembered. The catch gave. Old houses keep old habits. I slid the window up 4 inches, turned my shoulders, and eased inside. Lemon cleaner hung faintly in the air. The furnace hummed a low note. I waited until my hearing filled the room and then moved to the desk. One photo to mark the time. I opened the top drawer. A folder lay there with my name on the tab. The Margaret Project. My hands went cold, though the room was warm. Inside, pages listed dates, doctor visits, and a birthday party photo. Notes in Emily's hand described moments she claimed showed confusion. The surprise party, shot with my eyes half closed, had the word disoriented underlined. Another page summarized a mix-up with medication after my surgery and labeled it a pattern. It was a story built out of moments, a case assembled from glances. I photographed every page. I moved to the credenza and found a second folder labeled Media. Printouts of articles about elder fraud, probate, power of attorney. Someone had drawn arrows to phrases like diminished capacity and protection plan. They were preparing the stage, and they had props. I put everything back exactly as I found it, angle and distance the same, and took 2 more photos of the room for reference. In the hallway, a small motion sensor blinked a red dot. Not armed, only awake. I breathed again and drifted toward a doorway that never existed when I lived here. A nursery. A white noise machine hummed like a distant fan. A bassinet sat by the window with a delicate knit blanket folded over the side. The store tag still hung from the corner. I did not touch anything. I took 2 quiet photos and left the room as still as I found it. I spun the study window down, stepped to the backyard, and closed the gate behind me without a sound. I walked home with the kind of calm that feels like a held breath. I knew what I had now, enough to show intent, not enough to end the game. At my kitchen table, I set the disposable camera by the folder and checked the clock. 2:58. I brewed tea to clear the metallic taste of adrenaline from my mouth. Then I slid Harold's invitation letter on top of the folder and read it one more time. It was polite to the point of lullaby. Underneath the politeness sat granite. They would come to that office believing they were shepherding an old man. They would not realize the ground had moved until they felt it under their shoes. By then, I would hold more than anger. I would hold proof, names, and timing to pull their mask away. Before sleep, I made 2 calls. The first was to the bank's fraud unit to add a voice print. A patient woman named Carla had me read a sentence twice and say, Harbor Light. Any mismatch would route to her desk. The second call was to Jake Morrison. I asked if marina cameras might show the yacht that night. He knew a charter captain who kept footage for insurance and said he would ask. He told me to sleep. I said I would try. The next morning, the convenience store radio found me again while I stood in line with coffee. The announcer repeated the neighbor's quote and added a teller who thought I had mixed up Tuesday and Thursday. I felt the clerk's eyes slide toward me and away. The words clarified the field. They were building a case in public. I stepped outside into air that smelled like river and snow and made the decision out loud. Let them think I am drifting. Let them think they are helping. Camouflage, I reminded myself, can be standing still while others tell the story they prefer. Emily texted at 10. She wrote that she and Daniel might stop by to check the furnace and bring a casserole and a folder for some tiny insurance updates. It would only take a minute. The old me would have said yes to keep the peace. I typed 4 words. I have plans tomorrow. Then I made a different plan. I would spend an hour at the library pulling permit histories on my old block, then visit Harold to sign affidavits preserving my intent regarding the house and the company. Paper stops bullies better than fists. In Harold's office that afternoon, sunlight fell in bright squares across the table. He read my notes from the break-in and did not interrupt. When I finished, he slid over a sworn statement affirming my capacity and my present wishes, and a second page refusing to delegate authority without written consent. I signed, watched him notarize, and tucked copies into my briefcase. This is not the end, he said, but it is a start. Gossip can't erase. On Friday, let them talk first. That was my plan, I said. I ended the night with one small act. I put the safe deposit key in a small box on the top pantry shelf and pushed it back until my fingertips barely touched it. I turned off the lamp and stood by the window for a slow count of 20. The street was empty. The maple whispered its winter song. I spoke to the room and to the woman whose picture watches over it. "Rest easy, Margaret," I said. "They think I have lost. They think the story is finished. They have no idea what I hold." I went to bed and let sleep come the way a tide comes in. Quiet, certain, on time. If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 2 below to let me know you're here with me. Harold's office looked like the kind of place where decisions stick. Dark wood on the walls, a long conference table that could carry the weight of 10 hard truths, sunlight pouring through spotless glass. I arrived 5 minutes early and stood by the window until my heartbeat matched the traffic below. Harold came in with 2 folders and that tired, honest look I trust. "Today we stop the bleeding," he said, and set the folders down where everyone would see them first. We had agreed to invite Emily and Daniel under a gentle pretext. A conversation about planning. A check-in after my surgery. The letter had gone out yesterday. They accepted in minutes, which told me they were confident. I was no longer a father in their minds. I was a signature and a roadblock. Harold reviewed the plan again, slow and steady. Bank freeze in place, house flagged at the registry, medical affidavit ready, and my declaration revoking any informal delegations. "Let them talk first," he said. "Let them say the quiet parts out loud." They entered together, late by 10 minutes, full of ease I once mistook for grace. Emily's smile looked practiced. Daniel's handshake was hot and hard. He called Harold by his first name, as if familiarity could move a signature. Emily turned to me with soft eyes. "Dad, you look good," she said. We were so worried. I nodded and let the silence sit. A silent father is a mirror. People show you their reflection if you give them enough quiet. Daniel opened with a safety speech. He said words like best practice and fiduciary duty and routine guardianship. He mentioned my surgery 3 times in 2 minutes. He explained that autopay and consolidated control would remove stress from my life. He smiled at Harold when he said it. Emily nodded along. She added that Dr. Kaplan had concerns about memory after anesthesia. I watched her mouth form the lie as if she were blowing out a candle. When she finished, Harold slid the first letter forward as casually as a menu. The bank notice stated in simple lines that my savings account, $300,000, was frozen against transfer without my voice authorization, and a passphrase only I know. The registry notice stated that no one could record a deed, lien, or transfer against the Beacon Hill house without my physical presence. Daniel leaned forward and read both twice. He tried to make a joke about bureaucracy. The joke died on the table and did not move. I took the next document from my folder and set it where the light could catch the signature. On examination, I read, Mr. Richard Collins is fully oriented to person, place, time, and situation with no evidence of cognitive impairment. Dr. Kaplan's signature lay there like a black nail. Harold let the silence lengthen. Then I placed the first photograph. It showed my home office drawer open, a tab labeled The Margaret Project. Emily flinched. Daniel leaned back, the way a man leans from a flame he did not expect. "I went home," I said. "I looked in my desk. I saw your notes." Her face tightened. "You broke in," she said. I kept my voice level. "I went into my house," I said. "Into my desk, into my name." I placed more photographs, pages of timelines, comments about confusion, photographs cut to catch me blinking, arrows toward words like pattern. Then I put down the worst image. An envelope of family photos, faces trimmed to tell a different story. Margaret's face circled, a note in ballpoint ink, losing it like he is. The room tilted. My hands stayed still. "That is your mother," I said, and the sentence felt like a door closing. Emily's tears came fast and noisy. Daniel's voice grew smooth. He called it context. He said they were scared. He said they had to document what they saw. He said words like loving guardianship and responsible children. He said it was all for my good. I did not answer him. I set another sheet on the table. A notarized declaration, filed that morning, revoking any permission others might imagine, and reaffirming that I alone control my person and property. Daniel read it and pressed his tongue against his teeth. A small, private fury. "I want to show you one more thing," I said. I slid out a copy of a birth certificate I had photographed in the file cabinet. "Baby Collins," I read. "Date last month. Mother Sarah Collins. Father Richard Collins." I let the false line sit in the air like bad music. "I did not sign this," I said. "I did not father this child. Who did you pay to write my name?" Emily opened and closed her hands on her lap. Daniel said they had no idea. He said it must be a clerical error. He said someone at the hospital had gotten confused. He kept talking until Harold lifted his palm. "Enough," Harold said. "You will have a chance to explain yourselves. Not here." He gathered the photographs and slid them back to me, then turned toward the door. "Thank you for coming. We will be in touch through counsel." They left in a gust of cologne and indignation. The door clicked shut. I felt older and steadier at the same time. Harold stood with his hands on the back of a chair and let out a breath. "You are not alone," he said. "We call today. We do not wait." He dialed a number he keeps for hard days and spoke to an agent assigned to elder fraud and financial exploitation. He used the words, "I could not bring myself to speak about my own child." Orchestrated incapacity, fabricated evidence, attempted transfer. He handed me the phone. The agent's voice was calm and careful, the way a good nurse speaks before a shot. I told her what I found. I listed the bank attempt. I described the file labeled The Margaret Project. I told her about the envelope with the cut photos and the note about my wife. I told her about the nursery that had not existed before, the bassinet, the tag still on the blanket. I told her about the birth certificate and the wrong crooked line where my name did not belong. I said the mother's name, Sarah Collins. 17. No family listed. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she said, "Thank you. We will confirm Whitmore's involvement and move quickly. For now, stay quiet. Let them think you are pliable." I walked to a small print shop near the courthouse and scanned every image to a drive. The clerk charged me $15 and bagged the drive like a loaf of bread. On the way home, I passed the park where Margaret liked to sit with a paperback and an orange. It should have hurt more than it did. Grief and anger had traded places. Strategy had moved into the front seat. When I reached my kitchen, I labeled the drive with the date, put it in a hard case, and slid it into the freezer. Cold hides things. Paper stays honest when it is cold. At dusk, I returned to the alley behind my old house. I wanted to see who came and went. The porch light clicked on at 7. Daniel paced the kitchen with a phone clipped to his ear, cutting the air with his hand as he argued. At 8, a taxi pulled up. A woman in a dark coat walked straight to the door. No hesitation. The door opened before she lifted her hand. She moved the way people move when doors always open. I knew, though I had never met her. Miranda Torres, the name from the notes, the lawyer who specializes in turning elders into estates and grief into invoices. I called Harold and told him. He told the agent. 10 minutes later, a text arrived from an unknown number. "Go home. Lock your door. Do not return tonight." I obeyed. Some orders are mercy in disguise. At 9:40, the agent called. "We intend to watch who leaves with what," she said. "Do not spook them," I said. I understood. I brewed tea and walked the rooms while it steeped. I told Margaret's photograph what I had done and what I would do next. "They will not use your name to bury me," I said. Saying those words pressed them into the air. Saturday brought paper that mattered. A judge signed a temporary restraining order prohibiting any transfer or concealment of my property. Harold read the operative sentence twice. Any attempted violation shall be enforced forthwith by the court. We drove to the house with a marshal to serve it. I stayed in the car while Harold and the marshal walked to the door. Daniel opened with a smile, the friendly kind that does the work of a shield. The marshal spoke. Daniel's mouth tightened. Emily appeared at his shoulder, her face pinched in a way that made her look young and tired. She asked if the order was necessary. Harold said it was a pause button. "Use the time wisely," he said. The marshal had Daniel sign for service. It took 60 seconds to move the earth under their feet. The radio tried to bruise me that night. A neighbor reported that I had stood on the porch at midnight in slippers, looking lost. A bank teller suggested I had signed a form twice. A family source expressed concern. The segment lasted 60 seconds. It did the damage it intended. I turned off the radio and sat with the quiet. I named the feeling so I would not carry it without knowing it. Humiliation. Naming it did not end it. It made it useful. I told myself what my father told me when I was 12 and wanted to swing back too soon. Keep your hands in your pockets until it matters. Sunday, I drove to a small church across town and asked to use the phone by the vestibule. I called Whitmore Reproductive Services, the clinic named in the notes. I told the receptionist I was calling for Miranda Torres about paperwork for intended parents and mentioned a Monday appointment. She transferred me politely. A woman with a clipped voice confirmed a morning meeting for the couple. She asked if we needed the certificate prepared the same day. I said yes, then paused, then said I would follow up by email. "Use the address on file," she said, and repeated it. It matched the one in the folder back on my desk. I hung up and sat in the pews for a minute longer than I needed to, because cool air and unvarnished wood remind a man that some rooms still tell the truth without asking for money. Monday moved like a chess clock. At 2, Emily and Daniel met with a social worker in a bland office to discuss a community concern. The agent and 2 colleagues listened in next door. I waited at home with the phone on the table like a wired heart. At 2 o'clock, the agent called. "They are confident," she said. "He is talking about guardianship. She is showing texts from neighbors." 10 minutes later, she called back. "They are agitated," she said. "He is asking if a judge can act quickly. She asked about how to access a safe deposit box." Another 10 minutes. "He just said the word Whitmore," she whispered. She nodded. The line clicked and went dead. I stood perfectly still so the room would not fall. An hour later, a courier delivered a sealed envelope. Inside lay a copy of the order with the judge's signature dark and final, a memo outlining discrepancies at Whitmore, and a note from Harold in his square hand. "We are moving. Sleep if you can." I did not sleep. I stood at the mantel and looked at our wedding photo in the lamplight. I spoke 2 sentences. "They think I am weak. They are about to see consequences." Saying it that way made me feel like a man putting on his coat before a winter walk, the way hands work when they know what buttons do. Emily called that evening with a tone I recognized from the old days when she would justify keeping a borrowed car an extra hour. She spoke calmly about responsibility. She said the estate was too big to leave to chance. She said a guardianship would have protected me and the company from mistakes. She said she had tried to prevent embarrassment. Then she said something that shivered the room. "You should thank me," she said. I swallowed the first 10 answers. I let the 11th out. "Thank you," I said, "for telling me exactly how you see me." The line went quiet, then clicked off. Tuesday came with hard edges. Harold called at 8. The state attorney and the agent had executed a warrant at Whitmore. Records were preserved. An email from Miranda T. referenced expedited discharge and immediate certificate processing. A payments ledger showed cash deposits matching withdrawals from an account Daniel controlled. A minor's hospital record carried the name Sarah Collins and the word deceased. Cause of death listed as cardiac arrest during delivery. The nurse notes suggested stable vitals until the final hour. "We will not guess," the agent said. "We will prove." If you're still watching and find this story interesting, please comment 3 below to let me know you're here with me. By afternoon, we were in chambers before a judge with a face set in a patient line. Harold spoke briefly. The agent summarized. I offered the affidavit and my declaration. The judge asked me 2 questions. Did I understand the proceeding? I said I did. Did I wish to retain full control of my property and person? I said I did. She signed 2 orders. One affirmed my control. The other authorized protective measures on my accounts, and property prohibited any action by Emily or Daniel without notice to the court and to me. Her pen moved without hurry. The order sounded like a book closing. In the hallway, Emily waited, uninvited, but unsurprised. She stepped from a shadow with a face I used to wipe with a washcloth after spaghetti nights. Dad, she said, this is humiliating. I told her I had practiced humiliation all week. This is something else, I said. It is called justice. She said I was making a spectacle. I told her I could live with being seen if it meant my wife's name and my work were safe. Daniel appeared at her shoulder, bright with the anger of a man who has never been told no by a room that can enforce it. He started a sentence with the word rights. Harold stepped between us and nodded toward the stairs. Not today, he said. Back home, I set the new order beside the old one and stared until my eyes watered. Then I called Jake. He said the marina cameras showed the yacht leaving the slip the night I fell and returning without a crew list. He said he could get a copy to Harold by morning. You're not alone, he said. Not now, not again. I thanked him and let the gratitude sit in the room like heat from a register. Gratitude is fuel if you let it be. The evening news announced an inquiry into a regional network facilitating elder exploitation through legal pretext. No names, no images, enough air to breathe again. I turned off the set and listened to the house. Pipes settling, a refrigerator motor, the click of the furnace. Machines tell the truth. They either work or they do not. People blur their edges and then insist they are straight. I poured a glass of water and stood in the doorway of the living room. Fear, that companion I had carried like a heavy coat, slid from my shoulders and hung itself on a hook by the door. Strategy took its place. I can carry a strategy. It has handles. It lets a man sleep. I know the shape of what comes next. The agent asked me for one more act of patience and one act of courage. She wants me to remain quiet in public and let the world believe I am frail, even missing for a little while longer. In return, she will aim the light where it belongs. She will invite Miranda to say too much into a recorder. She will open the path that ends in a room full of federal badges. My part is simple and hard. I have to keep breathing and keep my hands off the wheel until the turn. Tonight I sit by the lamp with a pen and write names on a card. Not a hit list, a gratitude list. Harold, the agent, Jake. The judge listened without flinching. The bank manager did her job. The clerk at the print shop who bagged a drive like bread. And one more name, written darker. Margaret. I tell her the house is safe for now. I tell her our good name will not be stolen. I tell her I am not done. I tell her I will not fade. If you have ever been treated like a problem to be managed, you know how deep that cut goes. If you have ever watched your own child use your love as leverage, you know the quiet rage I am trying to lay down. It helps to say it plain. They thought I was weak. They are about to see the consequences of mistaking patience for surrender. This chapter belongs to paper, to signatures, to the kind of quiet that breaks a plan in half. The next chapter belongs to something louder. Feeling unseen and pushed aside is heavy, isn't it? If you believe every person deserves to be recognized and to see justice, comment the word justice. Now watch what they do when the light finally turns toward them. When the order slid across the table, it sounded like a gavel. In that wood-paneled room, numbers finally meant something human again. The $650,000 house, the $300,000 in savings, the $2.8 billion company Margaret and I built with coffee and grit. Not trophies, not bait, just the shape of a life. For the first time, I felt the ground hold. The day of reckoning did not arrive with fanfare. It came quietly in the form of a court summons that carried more weight than any storm I had ever weathered. I woke early, dressed in a gray suit Margaret once pressed for me, and sat at the kitchen table with a mug of black coffee. I touched the folder Harold had prepared, thick with documents, photos, and affidavits. Every page was a weapon sharpened by truth. For months I had been forced into silence, accused of frailty, painted as a man drifting into confusion. Today I would speak without raising my voice. The courthouse smelled of varnished wood and stale air. Sunlight pushed through high windows, turning the dust into thin streaks of gold. Harold walked beside me, calm and steady, his presence like ballast in a storm. The clerk called our case and we took our seats. Emily and Daniel entered moments later, Daniel in a tailored suit too sharp for his age, Emily pale, her eyes rimmed red, but hard. They sat opposite, whispering to each other. Their lawyer, Torres, smoothed her papers with a hand that did not shake. The judge, a woman with silver hair pulled tight, looked at me first. She asked if I understood the proceedings. I answered that I did. She asked if I had counsel. I nodded toward Harold. Then she asked if I had something to present. Harold stood, but I put a hand on his sleeve. I wanted my voice heard first. I rose slowly, let the silence grow thick, and then spoke. I am not confused. I am not lost. I built a company worth $2.8 billion with my wife Margaret. I raised my daughter. I paid her tuition, bought her first car, and walked her down the aisle. And now, after my surgery, after decades of sacrifice, I am told I am incompetent, incapable, and unworthy to hold the life I made. I will not accept that lie. A low murmur passed through the gallery. Harold then took over, opening the folder and laying out evidence like cards in a game no one else knew the rules to. First came the affidavit from Dr. Kaplan, stating in clear language that I was fully competent. Then the bank's notice of a block transfer of $90,000 attempted without authorization. Then photographs. The file labeled the Margaret Project, notes in Emily's handwriting documenting confusion, the envelope of family photographs with Margaret's face circled, and the words losing it like he is scrawled in ink. The judge's expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened. When the forged birth certificate was displayed, baby Collins, Father Richard Collins, Mother Sarah Collins, age 17, the room shifted. A collective gasp spread like fire through dry grass. The judge asked if I had consented to this child being named mine. I answered firmly, no. My voice did not break. Harold explained the investigation at Whitmore Reproductive Services, the payments linked to Daniel's account, and the tragic death of Sarah Collins. Silence pressed heavily on the room. Emily broke first. She sobbed loudly, her hands clutching the table as if she were drowning. We were trying to protect him, she cried. He wasn't himself. He didn't know what he was signing. Her tears fell, but the words landed flat. Daniel leaned forward, voice rising, claiming manipulation, claiming fabrication, accusing Harold and me of staging the evidence. His words tumbled fast, desperate, louder and louder until the judge raised a single hand. He fell silent like a boy caught lying. I looked at them both, steady and cold. You thought I was weak. You thought grief and age had made me blind. But it was your greed that destroyed you, not me. My words cut the air like glass breaking. Daniel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Emily buried her face in her hands. The judge spoke slowly, each word like a gavel strike. She affirmed my competence, voided any documents presented without my consent, and ruled that the estate, every account, every share, every property, remained under my sole control. She ordered a criminal investigation into the forged birth certificate and the attempted transfers. She closed with one line that felt like sunlight after a storm. This court recognizes Mr. Collins as the rightful guardian of his own life. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Torres whispered sharply to Daniel, her hand gripping his arm. Emily wept openly. For the first time in months, I breathed without the taste of fear. Justice had spoken, not with passion, but with certainty. That was enough. Weeks passed. Investigations deepened. Emily and Daniel were indicted on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and elder abuse. They appeared on the evening news in handcuffs, their faces pale under harsh lights. Reporters shouted questions. Neither answered. I watched from my living room, the lamp casting a soft glow over Margaret's photograph. I whispered, "They can't hurt us anymore." With Harold's guidance, I restructured my holdings. I placed $500,000 into a charitable foundation in Margaret's name, dedicated to scholarships for young women in technology. I sold the Beacon Hill house for $650,000 and moved into a modest apartment overlooking a park where children played and old men fed the pigeons. From my window, I could see life in its simplest form, ordinary, honest, untainted by greed. The apartment was smaller, but it felt vast with peace. The kitchen held just enough room for one. The bedroom caught the morning sun. The living room carried only essentials: a chair, a lamp, a shelf with books, and the framed wedding photo. I began to walk daily, carrying a notebook, writing thoughts Margaret would have teased me for. I found comfort in routine, in simplicity. I learned to breathe without the weight of betrayal pressing my chest. Emily wrote once from the detention center, a letter in shaky handwriting that began with Dad and ended with, "Please forgive me." I read it once and set it back in the envelope. I did not reply. Forgiveness is not an obligation. Silence was my answer, and it was enough. Daniel never wrote. Perhaps pride held him, or perhaps shame. It made no difference. My life had moved on. Neighbors in the new building welcomed me gently. A retired teacher lived upstairs, an old mechanic across the hall. We shared coffee in the mornings, spoke about the weather, and laughed about nothing. Their kindness reminded me that family is not always blood. Family is respect, honesty, and presence. One afternoon, as I sat on a bench in the park, I thought about the journey. The betrayal had been deep, sharp, almost fatal. But I had survived. I had defended my name, my work, and my wife's memory. And I had found a measure of peace no courtroom could give me. I said to myself, I don't need them anymore. I have myself. Saying it out loud freed me from chains I did not realize I still carried. The lesson lingered clearly. Parents must protect their dignity as fiercely as their children. Children must remember that love is not a license to exploit. And in this world, where greed wears familiar faces, only truth and self-respect endure. I knew then that Margaret would be proud, not because I had won in court, but because I had chosen dignity over despair. As the sun sank low, the park bathed in gold, I rose from the bench and walked toward home. My steps felt lighter than they had in years. Justice had been done. Peace was mine, and the future, for the first time in a long while, belonged to me. In the quiet of my apartment, with the city humming outside, I poured a glass of water and stood before Margaret's photograph. "I finally did it," I whispered. "We're safe. I'm safe." For the first time, I believed it fully, and as I turned off the light, I thought of tomorrow. The foundation needed a board. The park needed volunteers. Life had not ended with betrayal. It had begun again. I was free. I was whole. I was home. I wake each morning now with a kind of peace I once thought I would never feel again. The sun filters through the curtains of my small apartment overlooking the park, and the sound of children playing, of dogs chasing each other across the grass, fills the air with a reminder that life still moves forward. My days are no longer haunted by fear of betrayal or endless battles in court. Those days are behind me. Now I live in a place of quiet dignity, carrying scars, but also carrying wisdom. I joined a senior community group not long after the trial ended. At first, I was hesitant. I worried people would whisper about the scandal, about Emily and Daniel, about how close I had come to losing everything. But when I walked into that community center, no one looked at me with pity. They welcomed me with simple smiles and warm handshakes. I was just another man searching for connection. Soon I found myself giving small talks to younger folks who stopped by, college students, sometimes high schoolers, about business, about resilience, about knowing when to trust and when to protect yourself. I spoke to them about the company Margaret and I built from nothing, about the late nights, the risks, the triumphs. And every time I shared those lessons, I felt her presence beside me, nodding, proud. I no longer count dollars like trophies. My estate, once a figure written in headlines, has become a tool for something better. I kept what I needed to live comfortably. A modest pension, this apartment, a little fund for health and emergencies. The rest I placed into the foundation in Margaret's name. $500,000 already funds scholarships for girls who dream of entering the technology field. When I read the letters from those students, their gratitude, their excitement about the future, it felt like a balm on the deepest wounds. It reminded me that wealth has no meaning until it is used to lift someone else. Emily and Daniel's fate reached me only through newspapers and occasional whispers. They are serving their sentences, stripped of influence, shunned by former friends who once hovered around them like moths near a flame. I do not rejoice in their downfall, but neither do I grieve for them. They wrote their own ending. In prison, stripped of comfort and applause, perhaps they will find the truth that eluded them when money clouded their eyes. I heard once that Emily tried to send me a letter asking for forgiveness. I told Harold not to deliver it. My silence is not cruelty. It is a boundary. I whispered to myself, I don't need their apologies. I have my own life. Then something unexpected arrived. A letter from a woman whose name I recognized only faintly. Sarah Collins' mother. Her words trembled with grief, but also gratitude. She thanked me for protecting her daughter's memory, for exposing the lies that had twisted her story. She told me that Sarah's child, a boy named Robert, now lived with her. She wrote that he was bright, gentle, and deserved to grow up knowing the truth about his mother. She ended with a line that pierced me deeply. In some way, Mr. Collins, you defended not just your family, but mine. For that, we will always see you as family, too. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and placed it beside Margaret's photograph on the shelf. For the first time in a long while, I felt that family had stretched beyond bloodlines. That boy, Robert, though no kin of mine, represented the truth I had fought to defend. He was innocent, caught in the web of greed, and he was worth protecting. In my heart, I made a silent promise that if ever he needed me, I would be there. The lesson of this journey has become clear, etched into every quiet evening I spend on my balcony. For parents like me, the lesson is simple, yet hard. Love must be paired with boundaries. To give endlessly without expectation, to sacrifice without teaching respect, can invite betrayal. Parents must guard their dignity as carefully as their children's futures. For children, the lesson is harsher. Greed poisons the very bond that nurtured them. To exploit the hands that once fed you is to burn the bridge you may one day need most. Money may buy moments of pleasure, but it cannot buy back the trust shattered by betrayal. And for the world at large, I have learned this. Family in the modern world is not always defined by blood. Family is defined by respect, by loyalty, by those who stand with you when everything else is stripped away. Sometimes strangers, sometimes neighbors, sometimes people who share no last name with you at all, those are the ones who embody the true meaning of kinship. Now I fill my days with simple joys. Morning walks in the park, afternoons volunteering at the foundation, evenings with a book in hand. My apartment is modest, but it feels like a palace compared to the emptiness of the mansion where betrayal brewed. On my desk sits an old watch my father left me, its ticking steady, reminding me of the value of time itself. On the wall hangs Margaret's favorite painting of the seashore, its blues and grays calming me when memory threatens to overwhelm. One evening, as the sun lowered itself gently behind the park trees, I took a slow walk along the path. The air smelled faintly of lilacs. Children's laughter drifted through the air, and couples sat on benches, speaking softly. I stopped at the edge of the pond where ducks rippled the water, and I whispered words that rose straight from my chest. Every day I live is proof that character is the only wealth no one can steal. I stood there for a long time, letting the truth of those words settle in my bones. This was the end of my story, but also the beginning of something new. I had been broken, betrayed, and cast aside. And yet I had rebuilt not just my estate, but my soul. I go on now, lighter, steadier, knowing that what I have left is enough. Enough to live, enough to love in ways that honor those who deserve it, enough to leave behind a legacy not of wealth, but of integrity. That is my true inheritance, and it is unshakable. And so my life closes this chapter. The wounds will always mark me, but they no longer define me. Instead, I carry the lesson forward, that dignity, truth, and love are the only real treasures a person can keep. Tomorrow, I will walk again beneath the golden light of dusk, and as I do, I will know I am finally free. The story has come to an end. I hope it has brought you valuable lessons and insights. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next video. Goodbye, and see you again.